Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan. Yesterday we spoke about the stuff that's still missing for Nurgle, and I figured we'd carry on with this little mini-series as, well, it's only two more things that we need to talk about. So, today we're going to be talking about the Dwarfs. The Dwarfs got a lot of content when it came to Thrones of Decay, pretty much the Storm of Chaos stuff, which was great. Loads of Slayer stuff, the Goblin Hewer, and something really cool which was the Thunder Barge. The Dwarfs are in a good spot right now. Yes, I know some things are not great campaign-wise with the Age of Reckoning, but I don't imagine it's going to take that long until they start fixing it up. We do know Creative Assembly are going to be doing a patch for that sometime soon, so let's look towards what they're missing, because they're still missing a few things. I don't think it would be warranting a next DLC. I really doubt the Dwarfs will get a final DLC here, but you never know if we might see some stuff being implemented at FLC just because they want to, or a lot of people have been talking about a Scraps DLC, which is just like a centralized thing which gets a few units here and there for each roster. You never know. Hell, even maybe with Dogs of War, depending on how some things go. But yeah, let's talk about this because there's a bunch of really cool things, to be honest. Now, instead of starting off with units, we're going to start off with mount options because I'm honestly genuinely surprised that we haven't got this yet. This is the Shieldbearers, right? It's a pretty iconic mount option for the Dwarfs. Your dwarf just stands on a shield and some other dwarfs hold him up and move him around. Essentially what it did on the tabletop is just make it very durable and make him much stronger, and it looks like it's going to be the same thing when it comes to Warhammer the Old World. It's just kind of cool looking. It's not as grand as, say, for example, Thorgrim on his throne being pulled by various different dwarfs. Yeah, it's kind of iconic, and it's a massive shame that we still don't have this yet. There is a really cool mod, I believe, by Chaos Robbie, but a lot of us do want it officially, and it would be kind of cool to have that. Make your tanky lords even tankier. I know some people would be saying the Oathstone too, but the Oathstone is already represented in-game as a ability, actually, more than anything else, whereas this, yeah, has a proper model. The Oathstone is just a stone that someone's standing on. It's not really a proper mount option. It was just represented like that here. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm fully aware that it didn't fit the theme of Thrones of Decay, so that's perfectly fine. But the Dwarfs don't really have mount options, so it would be nice there. Some people were asking for gyrocopters and stuff in the Q&A. That's never a thing. So I feel like this could be a nice middle ground in for the future as a free thing for, I don't know, a Skulls promotion, or maybe just they're feeling nice about it. Alright, we're going to talk about steam drills. So this was a upgrade to your miner units, and essentially I could see this working very similar to that of the warp grinder for the Skaven. You know, it will do some AoE damage, it's good for knocking down walls and knocking down gates, which would be kind of cool to have, because at the end of the day, you know, dwarfs are supposed to be quite good at siege warfare too, considering loads of artillery, loads of shots. Why not have a drill that helps knock down gates a little bit faster, or, you know, do some damage to walls, because it would make perfect sense to be able to do that. It's something very, very different, and it would just be nice to have like this dwarf weapons team. They don't really have weapons teams, there was nothing else. Yet, something unique for them would be kind of cool. Not the most exciting of units, and truth be told, there's not a lot of missing units when it comes to the Dwarfs. We're not going to go after all the variants and stuff, because, yeah, let's be honest, it's not really needed. But something unique does pop up every now and then like this. This was just an upgrade for your miners units, but then again, the weapons teams for the Skaven was supposed to be just an upgrade rather than individualized units, so I could see this happening too. Put a second dwarf behind it, kind of like a supporter, and there you go. Alright, something totally left field, and I'm only talking about this because for some reason it's coming back for Warhammer the Old World, so just kind of unlocked a repressed memory. But Bugmans Cart, essentially we don't know what it's going to do in Old World. We don't know anything, to be honest, just yet. It's weird that we haven't heard anything about the Dwarfs yet. But this, and obviously the Grudge Pony has shown up there too. One or the other could work quite well as a supporting kind of unit. Have it around your dwarves, increase the range of one of your range troopers, like your thunderers, your quarrelers, and stuff like that. Or maybe it could also help out with a little bit of boost to your melee damage, to your warriors, your longbeards. A support unit would be kind of nice for the dwarves, in all honesty, and it would be nice to see one of these iconic miniatures being introduced into the game to have some sort of use. And yeah, I'm saying that this is probably going to be the best way to have something, you know, with a cavalry focus, you know, just the cart. A lot of people have been asking for cavalry for the dwarfs for some reason. That was never a thing. It doesn't look like it's ever going to be a thing. You're thinking about dwarf cavalry from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and stuff. well, actually The Hobbit. That's not a thing here, guys. I understand that it would be kind of cool, but it just doesn't fit with the aesthetic of how the dwarfs actually work in Warhammer Fantasy. Might as well keep on the left field and go with Sha Dragons, right? Here we've got a very big dragon which is closely associated with the dwarfs due to the fact that they're usually bound with special runes. So this is something that I don't imagine coming in any sort of dwarf DLC. A lot of people did want it for Thrones of Decay. I do imagine it kind of appearing if they ever decide to do like a whole Monstrous Arcanum Storm of Magic DLC, which is just introducing loads and loads of big monsters that people could end up using, loads of different factions could end up using as a, you know, Scroll of Binding. Once again, we've slowly been getting stuff from there, you know, the whole Dreadsaurians from that, the Incarnate Elemental of Beasts. I think the most important thing to remember is that it's not actually a dwarf unit. It's supposed to be its own thing, and it actually actively kills dwarfs too. But if it's going to be some sort of Monstrous Arcanum and Storm of Magic DLC, I mean, that could work. Having it limited in a similar way to how the Dreadsaurian is, and have a few factions being able to bind it for a time, or have like 2 or 3 in an army, that's something that I could see happening quite well. Rune Golems and Rune Guardians are stuff that people have been asking for quite some time actually, and it's something that was introduced in very early lore and then just completely forgotten about. There was a little bit of a hint at them in 8th edition, but that's pretty much it. Functionally, they're the same. One is supposed to be extremely large and the other one's supposed to be more ogre-sized. But yeah, engineering mixed with rune magic to create something of a very strong defender. It could be kind of cool to have some very heavily monstrous infantry, or even just monster-sized golems, which could really help out the dwarves here and there. But again, they're not really that important considering that the dwarves are in a very good spot. Like I said, I don't imagine another DLC coming for them, but I do imagine something every now and then, which could be kind of fun. That's pretty much it when it comes to units. Like I said, there are a bunch of missing variants, but it's like, you know, Thunderers without shields, and Hurlers without shields and stuff. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that would be unique would basically be what? The Iron Drakes with Drake Fire Pistols, and we don't need a pistol unit, we already have one with the Slayer Pirates. The Drake Fire Pistols would be pretty much just heavily armored, and that's it. I mean, yeah, I don't see that much of a point. The Dwarf roster unit-wise is, in fact, pretty damn good with how it is. It's supposed to be just pretty basic in terms of you hit hard, you fire hard. There's not a lot of skirmishing there. There's not really a lot of high movement. I mean, even then, you've got Slayers, which are fast for a dwarf. I know some people say, well, that's kind of boring, but this is the beauty of Warhammer Fantasy, where all the races are supposed to be pretty different. Right, you're supposed to castle up with the dwarfs, whereas the Empire is more the everyman. Slaanesh is supposed to be incredibly fast. Khorne is supposed to be very killy. You've got the variety which really gives you that replayability for a game like this. Alright, now we have to start looking towards characters, and there's already a decent amount of characters for the dwarfs. However, there's 2 that people are still asking for, so yeah, these are the ones that we need to talk about. For example, the first one being Bugman. Josef Bugman is an interesting character because he's very different to the normal standard dwarfs. Many of the dwarfs will be in their holds and kind of stay there, eventually going out every now and then, but yeah, in most cases they'll stay home. Josef Bugman and his family lived in a brewery that was burnt down by the orcs, well, some goblins, and ever since then, Bugman has been kind of going out on a bit of a crusade to exterminate the orcs and every single type of greenskin from the existence of the Warhammer Fantasy world. It's what makes him so well known because he's out there, he's formed up quite a horde of supporters, and he's probably one of the most active dwarfs in terms of really dealing with the greenskin problem. He's really, really cool, and a lot of people were expecting him at some point. Hell, some people thought he was going to be the character in Thrones of Decay for the reason of, yeah, you know, have him out there. I thought so too at one point too. It'd be really unique because it wouldn't be a typical dwarf faction. You could have this guy having some sort of pseudo-horde, or even in a very similar way to the Changeling, where he's a horde faction, a complete horde faction, but you'd be building up outposts in the lands of your allies. The Empire, the other dwarf factions. Kind of weird, but I think could work quite well. You'd be there to support your allies, so you'd be building up buildings which would help you and also help the other factions out, whereas, you know, the Changeling was kind of focusing mostly on negatives. There were some bonuses to the factions that you'd be building over. Bugman's an iconic character which still lives on to this day. He's got his descendants in Age of Sigmar, and there's the famous Bugman's Bar, a physical location within Warhammer World itself, so I imagine that Bugman's introduction to the game will be an eventuality rather than a maybe. Because, yeah, they want to bring in the big name characters. This is one that could easily do as a character pack DLC if this ever happens, or a free thing as a celebration. Hell, they could do it as a White Dwarf exclusive. I don't know if these things are ever going to happen again. We haven't actually had them in a while, right? But again, very famous character. They could even use this as the excuse to bring in Bugmans Cart, give it as a mount option, so it'll be a very different dwarf altogether. I would love to see him. I think I'm going to keep the flame burning for this one. And I know that CA staff are very into their Warhammer lore. It's only a matter of time, right? Even though the Dwarfs already have a lot of characters as it stands, which is weird considering that they haven't had that many DLCs. Not that they've needed it, but thankfully now we've got the last rework, which has fixed them up. But yeah, it would be a bit of a shame not to have Josef Bugman as a playable character. The only other big character that people were waiting for, and he isn't really that big, is Grim Berlickson. Yeah, this guy over here, he's got a cog axe, he's got a shotgun, he's very heavily armored. This guy is kitted to do some damage. Unfortunately, I really don't see that this guy will ever come in as a legendary lord, mostly because, well, we already have an engineer character with Malachi McKyson, so he's already kind of redundant. It would be nice to have some sort of legendary hero. We do have Garagrim, obviously, but it would be nice to have multiple legendary heroes for all the other races and factions, so seeing a second one for the Dwarfs would be quite cool, to be honest. Again, if a character pack ever happens, which I'm hoping Creative Assembly are taking into consideration, because there's loads of races in Warhammer which are almost done, and some of them are lined up, I guess, to take some DLC. We're expecting some DLC for the Empire, for example, but it's not going to introduce all the characters, which are kind of wonderful. A lot of people would love to see some extra Dark Elf stuff. There's not really a lot of missing units. It does feel like we're getting closer to the end, especially since we aren't really able to have Old World stuff unless something changes with Games Workshop. But I do imagine that maybe down the line we might see a Total War Warhammer 4, not 40k, but literally still in fantasy, but with the new engine and Old World focused. I don't know. Something tells me that this is going to happen. It's one of these weird things. You never know, but yeah. It's important to note that the Dwarves, like the Empire, have a stupid amount of characters. So many were introduced over the many, many years of Warhammer Fantasy. The only problem is that many of them would be the same. There's a lot of kings, there's a lot of thanes, there's a lot of rune priests and rune lords, but they won't really be unique. I think with Bugman being added in as a Horde faction, like pure Horde, that would kind of complete all the missing legendary lords in a sense. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd have everyone, but there's really no point unless they can make stuff really, really unique. I'm pretty happy with how the Dwarfs are done now, and I think you should be too. I think that a lot more dev time should go towards other characters, which is going to be kind of funny that I've said this here, whereas when we're going to talk about the Empire soon, I'm going to be saying, look, we won all the Elector counts, but that's because the Electors are supposed to be very different. I wouldn't be disappointed if we got like a random dwarf every now and then. I mean, here you've been seeing Helga Longplatz as the screen, mostly because I think she's cool, and she's apparently returning. Her model is going to be a made-to-order thing for the Dwarfs, apparently. That was confirmed by Games Workshop when they announced the Dwarfs, and then gave no context after that, which is just hilarious. But yeah, it's nice to see that the Dwarfs are pretty much, yeah, complete. It's a good thing. We're getting close to that for loads of races and factions, and it's a good thing to see. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Start a bit of a discussion. And no stream today, by the way. I am going to be working on some back-end stuff because I have to catch up with a lot of different things before my trip to the UK, but I can tell you that there's going to be a few battle reports coming out soon. I know you guys have been missing that, which the Dwarfs are also included in there too. And if you're new here, might suggest subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything. It just kind of helps the channel get a little bit more notice from the evil YouTube algorithm. You know how it is, where if you miss a few days of content, it kind of punishes you, because that's a way that YouTube incentivize its creators. Burnouts, that's always the best way to go. But yeah, have a great day, guys. I'll see you all again very, very soon. And yeah, there's a lot of content to come.